Hey everybody, it's finally happening. I'm finally experimenting with lip masks. So here's my experimental process. We're gonna start with experiment number 1. Love the color, looks gorgeous. Here is the formula and then the recipe I used. And I did a 20-gram batch for every single one of these experiments. And there are 2 common ingredients in every single one of these lip mask formulas, Lee-peptide and vitamin E. So let's get into it. So like I said, I'm making a 20-gram batch. There'll be a 20-gram batch for every single one of the experiments I make. And I'm starting with the heated phase. So my first thought was to use this Polyamide 3 because I've used it in a lip gloss stick before, which is a Patreon exclusive video you can watch on here. And it gives like a tacky feeling. So I'm hoping this will achieve that tacky feel, but also thicken the mask at the same time. And then I'm going to use some natural wax jelly. This is a natural alternative to petroleum, and I'm hoping this will create that tacky feeling as well. Then I'm using some TKB gloss base. You can use jojoba gel or Versagel. This is actually Versagel, but the branding is TKB. Hoping this will achieve, some jelly viscosity and some tackiness. Then I'm adding in some lauryl laurate. This helps with penetrating the ingredients into the skin. Then I'm going to be adding in some castor oil. This is a heavier oil that's very, very common in lip products because it feels good on the lips, but not so much on the skin. And then some shea butter, super common to use in lip products. So I added some of that in for some emollients. And let's melt all this down. And Polyamide 3 is very, very finicky. It does not like to melt. So mix this as much as possible as it melts to help melt the Polyamide 3. And I promise eventually it will melt. So here's what it looks like all melted. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is add in some color. This is called Perky Pink from TKB Trading. And I'm really only adding the color for aesthetic and just for me to be able to tell apart all the experiments without having to label them. It doesn't really add any color to the lips. So I've let it cool and now it's around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And honestly, it is not thickened up as much as I expected. This is really thin. And as of right now, I'm not too confident in it, but sometimes things thicken up overnight after, about 24 hours, so I'll give it a chance. And I'm going to go ahead and add in the cool down ingredients now, which of course includes the Lee-peptide. This has tripeptide 1 and it has hyaluronic acid, which is perfect for a lip mask. This helps with lines on the lips, so it's anti-aging, it helps plump the lips, and it helps hydrate the lips. And then I'm going to add in some vitamin E. This is an antioxidant, helps keep the ingredients fresh, and vitamin E is just wonderful for chapped, dry lips. So mix everything in there, and I'm going to let this sit overnight, and we'll check back on it later. But as of now, let's work on experiment 2. It's this gorgeous, gorgeous red lip mask. So here's the formula again, and here's the recipe. This time I did away with the Polyamide 3. I'm just really banking on the lauryl laurate and the Versagel and the natural jelly wax to create a thick enough jelly type of texture, I guess. Now that I'm looking at this formula, I'm realizing I definitely needed more of a thickening agent, but at the time, this is the experiment I came up with. And again, we're making a 20-gram batch because we don't want to make a bunch because these are experiments. Starting with the heated phase, as always, I added in my Versagel, and then my natural wax jelly, and then my lauryl laurate, some castor oil, and I added in way, way, way too much. So I fixed that problem. Then I added in some shea butter, and let's go ahead and melt this down. After it was melted, I decided to add in this red coloring. I'll link to it down below. I'm just literally adding in the tiniest amount because that's all you need to color this lip mask. I'm not really wanting it to add pigment to the lips. I just want the mask to be colored for aesthetic purposes and so I can tell them apart, like I mentioned before. So here it is at room temperature, and again, not very confident in how liquidy it is. So what I think I'm gonna do is skip the cool down ingredients, save money. I don't want to add these in if I don't think this mask is even going to work out. So we'll wait till tomorrow, see if it thickens, and if it thickens, I'll add in the cool down ingredients. Alright, so moving on to experiment number 3 is this gorgeous little peach color. My thought process for this one, again, was let's hit it with the Polyamide 3 again, but let's increase the percentages. And then I was like, ooh, let's add in some sunflower wax. Since the first experiment had Polyamide 3, but it was too thin, I figured increase the Polyamide 3 percentage to help with viscosity, but then also add in some sunflower wax. And again, with the natural jelly wax and Versagel to add in some tackiness, lauryl laurate, help thicken a bit bit, even though I don't feel like it does much thickening. But it's like a solid crystal, so I feel like it should thicken up the product, but it doesn't seem to do much. But it does help with the skin penetrating agent, and it also helps with spreadability, so kept that in. Again, we're doing a 20-gram batch and starting with the heated phase. All right, so this time I'm gonna do things a little different. I'm gonna weigh the polyamide 3 out in a separate container and melt that down by itself. Since it's so stubborn and doesn't like to melt, I figured keeping it by itself, it'll be easier to, make sure everything gets melted, and I think it'll just melt easier. And then I'm gonna add all the other ingredients in the heated phase in a separate container. And once these ingredients are melted down just a little bit, I'll add a little bit of this into the polyamide 3 to give it a little bit more like liquidiness to help melt it. I hope that makes sense. So once the side on the right is melted a little bit, I'll pour a little bit of that into the polyamide 3 container, because adding a little bit of that liquidiness, I just feel like helps melt it down. But I don't want to have too much liquidiness because then it's hard to make sure all the polyamide 3 is melted. I hope that made sense, because in the end, this actually worked way better and it just made the process a lot easier. So melt your polyamide 3 separate and then add a little bit of the other phase into it at first until it's all liquidy, and then combine them all together. Hope that made sense. But yes, we're gonna add in some coloring. I'm gonna add in this Tickled Peach. I actually added a couple drops this time. And yeah, just mix that in and let it cool down and we'll see what happens. So this one, it's already at like room temperature here and I'm already pretty confident in it. It looks like it's thickening up quite a bit. It's a nice jelly texture, which is what I was going for with this lip mask. So I'm pretty confident at this time. So I went ahead, added in the cool down ingredients, mixed those in, and now I'm gonna let it sit till tomorrow. Lastly, experiment number 4, and I don't know if you can tell, but this one's definitely the thickest. So at this point, I was just not having it anymore. I'm like, you know what? We're doing this. We're going to make one thick. I also just had enough of the polyamide 3, so I left that one out. And I made sure to add in 6% sunflower wax to make it nice and thick. Brought the percentage of the lauryl laurate down. Not quite sure why, but I did. This time I added in triglyceride, which I'm not really sure why I did that either, I guess. Maybe I just didn't want to do 40% castor oil. But next time I might try it with 40% castor oil instead. And then I put in a good chunk of natural jelly wax. I think this is the highest percentage I've ever used it at. I was just really hoping for that like petroleum-like consistency from it. And yeah, we made a 20-gram batch. And as always, starting with the heated phase. Adding in the sunflower wax, the natural jelly wax, the lauryl laurate, the castor oil, the triglyceride, the shea butter, and let's melt it down. So here she is, all melted. And this time I'm doing a combination of roasted chestnut and perky pink just to make a different color from the rest so I can tell them apart. And I actually really like the color, looks super cute. And as I was mixing this, as you can see, it's literally thickening as I was just mixing in the color. So at this point I was like confident, I was so happy. It's 142 degrees Fahrenheit here and it's already thickened up. So once it got under 100 degrees, I added in those cool down ingredients, mixed everything in, and I was just confident at this point. I'm like, you know what, this is gonna be the best one. I'm excited. So here's all the experiments all laid out so you guys can just get a good gander at them. And yeah, let's check back tomorrow to see how they are. So it is the next day now. Everything basically stayed kind of the same. I don't know, I guess this one did thicken up quite a bit, but it kind of looks chunky. I kind of think it might be from the polyamide 3, I don't know. But then again, this one looks chunky. And this one didn't even have polyamide 3, so I guess it's not from the polyamide 3, maybe the Versagel. And then this one, experiment number 3, definitely thickened up more. Experiment number 4, let's talk about this. This one is just perfect. Okay, well, I guess I'm going back to talking about experiment number 1 after we jarred it all up. Look, you can tell it's just way too liquidy. I don't know, like this would be nice if it was just thicker. And the color is so gorgeous. So like, I mean, some people might like this. It might be your thing, but as of me, it's not my thing. Kind of worked as a lip balm a little bit. And then, oh my gosh, experiment number 2. Look, that was way too thin. That was even thinner. Looks gorgeous though. Like, it looks nice, but wasn't my vibe. Number 3, honestly, I think some of you guys might actually end up liking this one. Me personally, it wasn't for me. I tried using it actually as a lip mask one night and I ended up wiping it off before falling asleep. It wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't my thing. But you might like it. So don't knock that one. But number 4, this one, best one. Really, really, really loved this. Now, I've never actually used a store-bought lip mask, so I don't know how it compares, which I really, really should buy a store-bought lip mask just to see how those ones actually work. But I was really happy with this one. I put it on my lips before bed and it didn't even bother me. I actually really loved it. It looked pretty on my lips too, so I don't know, I just kind of felt pretty also going to bed. But yeah, experiment number 4 was definitely a win, and I'm excited to try more. So I hope you guys enjoyed this experiment video. Talk to you later.
Stuck in the motions, I've been consumed by the wrath of time. Like I'm shattered in this life. It's still the path that I've chosen, because I've had a vision. Now I'm on a mission to find myself.